Welcome to the show and a very happy new year. Online hate is an issue which concerns many of us right now, including politicians, with the government looking to address the problem with the online safety bill. Piers Morgan is just the latest example of one of those who has been affected. The story was splashed on the front page of The Sun this morning after a man was arrested for allegedly sending death threats to the TV star and his son Spencer. In an unrelated case, I sat down earlier this week with another victim of online abuse, member of the Northern Ireland Legislative Assembly, Diane Dodds. So Diane, you and I have been around politics in Northern Ireland for quite a while. We know it's a tough business. We've both developed quite a tough skin to challenge and debate and argument. But what happened on New Year's Eve was something different. Can you tell the viewers about what happened on New Year's Eve?
Well, on New Year's Eve, I, about 10 o'clock or thereabouts, thought I would put up a happy, joyous New Year's Eve post to just wish everyone well, hope that 2022 is a much brighter, better year than we've had in 21, and left it at that and put up a picture of me walking in the beautiful Drumcare forest with my two dogs. Sure, what could go wrong? Yeah. And sometime later, again, in an anonymous troll decided that that was the right time to answer my New Year's post by starting to troll me over the death of our son. Yeah. It's one of those things that's almost inexplicable, how anyone could use a New Year's Eve message to followers to actually do something that was that malicious and that callous. And not content with one post, they put up a number of posts in this particular vein. And if I was to say anything around the wider impact of the whole incident, is the enormous amount of reaction that has got, the enormous amount of kindness that has been shown, and just the goodness of people in saying, please do not associate me with such an awful action as this.
And I think that has been the positive nature that came out after, but the absolute, and you've talked about how it really went to the core of you, actually somebody deliberately trolling you about the death of your young son who died back in 1998. I mean, it was just incredible for those of us who are friends with you to see that sort of thing put out there on Twitter. I mean, it was just beyond comprehension that somebody could stoop so low. And I mean, for you and your family, it must have been absolutely dreadful.
Well, it is pretty dreadful. Andrew died in 1998. He was 8 years old. But even with the passage of time, the death of your son remains something that is very, very difficult. And the trolling was enormously difficult to take. But the wonderful thing is the reaction of people to that, and people from all backgrounds, all types of people. I've had emails from people in Dublin, from people in Tipperary. I've had messages from right across Northern Ireland. I've had flowers to the office. I've had flowers to the house. And that's really very, very encouraging. But the one thing that is really something that we all must tackle is the fact that this particular account has been trolling people for quite some time. And this account targets people. It has targeted many of those who are the innocent victims of terrorism. And it targets them, again, at their most vulnerable point. So yesterday when I was giving a statement to police about this particular action, I also had with me one gentleman whose father was shot dead in the farmyard. And that troll has been targeting that man for over a year and a half. And the incredible thing about this is that Twitter allows it to happen. And when the incident with myself and my son was reported to Twitter, Twitter indicated that it had broken no rules.
Yeah.
So this account had broken no rules. Now you've got to ask yourself, what on earth are the rules that Twitter and social media companies go by if things like this are not breaking the rules of sensible communication? But this turns into malicious harassment almost of people and their lives. And it really is awful.
And you're absolutely right. I've noticed that a number of victims of terrorism have now come forward as a result of the publicity surrounding your particular case to say, well, actually, we've been targeted by this account for a number of months, and as you say, in some cases over a year. So Twitter have put out a statement around this issue. What's your response to that?
Well, if you look at the response of Twitter, and it has been made public, it's public for everyone to see. It's almost gobbledygook. It's the sort of thing that is yes, it is nonsensical. Does Twitter's response say that they will give up the information they have on the account so that police can identify the person and actually then go use the law that they have and go after them under those kinds of malicious communications? No, it doesn't say any of those things. And Twitter talks about a community of values. It talks about self-regulation. It talks about its own guidelines. And clearly those are not working. They are not working. They didn't work for me, and they are not working for other people in Northern Ireland and much, much wider afield. And the Online Harms Bill is an attempt to try to regulate the social media sphere. But it will be a toothless bill because, again, it talks about legislating for principles, but only offering codes of practice that would be maybe monitored and regulated by Ofcom. And we all know how that has worked in the past. So I think that unless the government goes and takes another look at the bill, unless the government actually says, if you are causing harm, then you must be responsible for that harm. And the only way I think that they can do that is to make sure that this cloak of anonymity that is used on social media platforms is not there, that gives protection to those who harass, but no protection to those people who are on the receiving end of that harassment.
And you will know what the argument is against that. People will say to you, that goes against freedom of speech, and you and I both believe in freedom of speech, but it doesn't stop people from saying what they have to say, but it actually makes them accountable.
Well,
agree with that?
I mean, I think that freedom of speech in a democracy is an enormous gift that we have in our democracy, and something that we must work very, very hard to preserve. But with that comes responsibilities. And the government have responsibility to those people who are harmed by Twitter, by social media in its widest form. Social media is an amazing tool for people like me to get a message out, but it becomes wrong when it starts to allow this kind of malicious content on social media. So therefore, I think government needs to take a look at the Online Harms Bill again in the context of anonymity, so that Twitter knows exactly who it is, and there is a verification point that they will be able to understand who it is that has this account, why they have the account, and if there is irresponsible messaging on the account, that those people can be held responsible.
I mean, it is my understanding, I haven't spoken to a lawyer about this, that Twitter can identify these people through their algorithms and what have you, but they choose not to. And it's only when they're threatened with criminal prosecution that they actually reveal who these people are. I think there is an onus on the social media platforms to recognise the harm that is being done here and to step forward, because as you rightly say, it's not just you, it's many others who have been the subject of this particular troll actually, but of course there are a lot of other trolls out there as well. And I suppose if there is some good out of this, Diane, it will be that those social media platforms and government recognise that this is an issue that needs to be tackled.
Absolutely. And if government don't tackle this, we will still continue in the same vicious cycle of this kind of trolling. So this account is now disappeared.
Yes.
But it will reappear in another guise at a different time. And the same kind of trolling and the same kind of harms will just perpetuate themselves. And we've got to make social media companies responsible and responsive to the issues that are in front of them. I, as a former member of the European Parliament, sat in the European Parliament in a meeting with Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, talking about fake Facebook accounts and how those accounts have caused enormous harm to young people through cyberbullying, and in Northern Ireland that in one occasion has resulted in a terrible suicide. We cannot allow this to continue. And government needs to look at the anonymity issue, needs to make people verify their identity so that this is available should there be harms caused by it.
That was Diane Dodds speaking to me earlier on this week, and I want to thank Diane for speaking about what is a very personal issue, the death of her young son, Andrew, who just died aged 8, just before his 9th birthday. He had spina bifida from birth, but I know he brought joy to his mum and dad right throughout his short life.